What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast. This is a podcast for people who are passionate about neurology and about brains and about improving brain function. So this podcast, like all the other podcasts, is brought to you by Feed a Brain, feedabrain.com. Head over to feedabrain.com. We got supplements, articles about enhancing neuroplasticity and what it is to create positive plasticity rather than negative plasticity. If you are enjoying these podcasts, consider supporting us. Throw a buck or two. You can head over to patreon.com forward slash AIBI. That's spelled Patreon. Patreon.com forward slash AIBI for Adventures in Brain Injury. Throw us a buck or two. And for a way to support us without spending any money is leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or on Facebook on the Adventures in Brain Injury page or the Feed a Brain page, or Feed a Brain, the book, on Amazon. Leave a review on there. Super helpful in helping get the word out. So today I am interviewing a amazing mentor of mine. I just have so much respect for this woman. She does an online practitioner training, and she teaches practitioners and patients and patients who are ready to get into becoming a practitioner. And we talk about how qualifications are not in your credentials, but are in your experience and your knowledge and your application. So if you're interested in becoming a health practitioner, or if you're just interested in this stuff, which I would assume you're interested in this stuff since you're listening to this podcast, check this out. Andrea gives a huge discount for her program as well. So check this out. Basically, it gives a huge discount if you head over to feedabrain.com /FBS for full body systems. See me, what I have learned through her work and partnering with medical teams in order to bring about the best outcome has been revolutionary for me and for my clients. So I also work with clients, and if you're interested in working with me, again, I partner with my clients to bring about the best outcome. And nobody plans for a brain injury. Nobody really knows what to do when they're hit with a medical crisis. And I, unfortunately or fortunately, have been in that situation. And I love bringing my experience, my knowledge, and my connections in order to do so. So if you're interested, head over to feedabrain.com /consult and fill out the form, or email consult@feedabrain.com and let's have a conversation. All right. So without further ado, here is my mentor and someone I have an enormous amount of respect for, Andrea Nakayama. Andrea Nakayama, it is so good to have you.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's always such a pleasure to see you. As you know, like I'm just so appreciative of who you are, the work you do, everything, and your contribution to my growth and understanding in functional nutrition, physiology, and tools that we can use to affect change in people's lives.
Right back at you, Kevin. I'm so thrilled by the work that you're doing and to see you thriving. And that's what this community is all about, really making sure that we have the ways to communicate with each other, to go out into the world, and to help as many people as we can.
Totally. Yes. Well, it's my pleasure to be along your side for this journey. for this adventure. So I got a cat in my lap. For anybody that's not watching this, you're missing out. This is an adorable kitty right here. And Andrea will likely be showing some slides. So check it out on YouTube, or on IGTV or whatever it's posted on. Yeah. So let's start with a little bit of background. Like, what got you into, you're an artist.
No, thank you.
And I guess we're all artists, and life is our canvas. And you're a phenomenal artist at that. But what moved you from into physiology and health and wellness?
Yeah, interesting. And thank you. You know, I came from the world of being an artist, and I do feel very much like this is a different canvas, and that our ability to make an imprint on an industry that needs support is a huge opportunity and needs creativity for that resolution. So long story short, I came from an art background, and I was always really passionate about health and food. In fact, when I stopped making art with my hands, I started making food with my hands and writing as my form of art. So instead of making things like I worked in a three-dimensional world, I went to making food and making sure that I was always expressing my ideas in writing. And that is where I was focusing my time and energy and thinking I would pursue a career in writing, until my husband, Isamu, got sick and was diagnosed with a brain tumor. In fact, he actually didn't have many symptoms before that diagnosis. Looking back, I could see one or two things, but it seemed very sudden. And that really catapulted an entire change in my focus. So my research went into understanding the brain and brain physiology, and my food making went into the healing properties of food and seeing everything we could do to support brain health and to support bringing down inflammation and getting through various sorts of treatments. And I think of that time as sort of my boot camp in the realm of health, physiology, how everything's connected, and really the place where food is medicine. I should say that during that journey, as you know, Kevin, I was also newly pregnant. So when Isamu was diagnosed with a brain tumor, I was just 7 weeks pregnant. We were actually telling people that we had a brain tumor before we were revealing that we were going to have a baby. And so those two journeys are very interlinked in my life. And Isamu was expected to live about 6 months, and we were able to extend his life with everything we did, so conventional and unconventional. He lived about 2.5 years. So he died when our son Gilbert was 19 months old, so 1.5 years. And Gilbert is now in college. And it's been a journey of putting all my time and attention into this world of health and healing and food as medicine, and the understanding of how we need to fill some gaps in healthcare.
Yeah. I often talk about qualifications are not your credentials. Your experience and your outcome qualify you in many ways,
Yeah, absolutely.
because when you're put in a situation where you're studying, like, your family's life depends on it, which is exactly what you're doing. You're not trying to pass tests. You're
right.
Like, this is extremely important, and there's so much passion behind it. And your teaching style is phenomenal. So tell me when you shifted into teaching others.
Yeah, that was a long journey. So I became very passionate about everything we could do to extend Isamu's life, to support myself during the stress in pregnancy. Like pregnancy is
Hmm.
already a huge stressor. So it's not surprising that the combination of the added stress while I was pregnant ultimately became one of my own triggers for my own autoimmune condition. I have Hashimoto's. And that was really a journey for me of learning where my interests lie. So it took a while after Isamu died for me to realize that I needed to leave the career I was in. I had a very established career in book publishing and was able to work from home. I was that established that I could sort of write my own way. I had an amazing job. So to leave that and say, I'm going to put myself back through school. I'm going to get all these different credentials, as you talked about, and start practicing, start seeing people was a huge leap, especially as a single mama. But I did it. And I went through many years of schooling and ultimately recognized that I was doing something that nobody else was really doing. And it was how I was looking at the body and making decisions about food and helping people to see their own life and lifestyle and ownership of their own health and making these connections, connecting these dots that wasn't really anywhere else. And I was writing, which I loved to do, and people were reading my blogs and my emails back in the day when people still opened emails. And and there was attention coming from certain communities about the successes I was having in practice and with how I was talking about what I was doing, and that kind of intersection of using the body as a tool for awakening. That the science, the evidence wasn't in our studies of methylation and folate. The evidence was really in basic science, how the body should function and how we help it to do that with the choices we make every day with what we now call the modifiable diet and lifestyle factors. So people were coming to me, asking me, will you teach me what you're doing in your practice? This is back in 2011. And in 2012, I launched a school. I thought it wasn't really a school at the time. I thought it was like a little mentorship group where I would be helping some practitioners, nutritionists, health coaches to understand these connections. The first year that I offered full body systems was very different than it looks now. I thought people needed something different than I ultimately realized they did need. I came to realize that many people who are in the healing professions don't actually understand how food meets physiology. They don't understand what I call symbiosis, and that we needed to, as a basis, understand how the body works, how everything's interrelated, and then how we impact those interrelations and our healing journeys for ourselves, for others, by bringing that obvious connection together. And so as it went forward into its second year and to where it is now, I've used that understanding of physiology as the tool to awaken how we work as practitioners of all different sorts, from people who are in the educating realm, people like yourself, Kevin, to MDs who want to bring and embrace more diet and lifestyle into their practices and make these clear and obvious associations that we can also give back to our clients and patients. People, we as patients, all of us are patients, we don't really know what's going on in our bodies. A lot of people don't understand where their liver is or where their stomach is versus their intestines, what's supposed to be happening in their intestines, how their gut's connected to their brain. All those connections give us as patients power to own our own journey. And so that is kind of the pathway I took from doing it myself to realizing, wait a minute, people are responding to this. Why? What am I doing that's different? And then being asked to teach. And recognizing, as I think we do with all of our clients and patients, that sometimes what we think people need isn't actually what they need. So being in a dynamic relationship where the training itself evolved and transformed over time.
So good, so good. And yes, you get these results, and the way you teach people, it just it brings your work, and it spreads your reach exponentially. And I love the way you teach and the results you get. Because what you taught me with physiology and how food meets physiology, who'd thought that food matters, right? And how double blind placebo controlled studies are true but partial. Like, that's
Right.
not the whole story. And
Exactly.
there's so much with like peer reviewed research and double blind placebo controlled studies that actually is often fudged. And if it's funded by a company that's looking for a certain result, they're going to throw out every result that isn't what they want, and they'll publish the one that is, right?
Yes.
So even science and peer reviewed research is not what we're looking for. Physiology is an amazing tool that we can use, and that's true of partial also. This
Yep.
works for some people in
Yep.
some ways, like our unique physiology. We're all very unique, and often you're like, yeah, we're all different.
Yes.
Yeah, but we all have two eyes. We all have a nose. We all have a mouth. We all have a liver and a kidney, and they all work pretty close the same way, right? Like,
Yeah.
yes, there is variation, but there's things that work, right?
Yes.
And that's something that's so beautiful in the way you teach the frameworks, rather than like, here's a prescription. If diagnosis X, treat with Y. You're like, if diagnosis X, check out this and
Right.
this and this, and let's see what the underlying factors are and find the root cause of
Yes.
what's happening here. So you tell me about the roots, the main roots.
Yeah, I kind of want to also respond to a couple of things you just said, if that's okay, and then we'll
Sure.
go into the roots. I think that a lot of clinicians think they know physiology. So we talk about physiology, and I will get a lot of people who are like, is your course going to be repeat for me? Because I already studied physiology. But I think what you nailed is it's that place where where diet and lifestyle meet physiology. We know more now if we look at the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, that those have a huge impact on somebody's risk for developing an autoimmune condition or any other chronic condition, or therefore even having difficulties healing from an acute incident, like, let's say, a TBI. So we have to really look at the whole person. We know the effects of lack of sleep. We're seeing now in studies that sleep actually impacts the microbial terrain. We know the impacts of stress and conversely of meditation on somebody's ability to heal. That kind of information is where we look at physiology through a new lens. So we're not just understanding the basics of how things work, but we're understanding connections. And there's a lot we have to gather in order to understand where those connections can make a difference. In addition to that, when we understand how the body should function, like you said, we have two eyes, we all have certain organs in our systems. When we understand how the body should function, we're able to use what works and what doesn't work as a clue, as opposed to being stymied when a protocol doesn't work. And that's the difference. That brings us into what I like to think of as a mental model, a framework versus a protocol. And I've recently been in some deep discussions with some functional medicine doctors that I'm partnering with on a project about the difference between a protocol and a framework. So we can say, here's the protocol for autoimmunity, and I'm going to call the hoax on that. I was careful not to curse there. I'm going to say that, there is no protocol for autoimmunity. There is, however, a framework we can apply, and we need to think through the framework so we can adapt and adjust to every single person as a unique individual, because two of us could have Hashimoto's and one of us had adverse childhood experiences and the other one didn't. One of us has a lot of stress in our lives and the other one doesn't have as much stress. One of us is 27 and the other of us is 54. There are differences. We can't say that a child with a TBI is going to be the same as a 87-year-old who has a TBI. We have to think through the similarities and have an approach and also the differences. And if we don't have a framework, this is where we get stuck as practitioners, because we're treating those two people the same because they have the same label and they are not the same person. Again, we can't treat a 8-year-old who has Crohn's disease the same way we treat a 58-year-old who has Crohn's disease. There are different parts of the story that we need to embrace. So yes, I really do advocate for the use of tools, of frameworks for how we approach cases and think into them. And the key word there is think, so that we're not stuck into following something that is written on paper for that condition. And Kevin, I think as you experienced inside my training, it's a huge paradigm shift. And on our message boards, people are asking, but like, what should I do with, I have a new client and she has lupus and I've read every book on lupus and and that's not the way we're going to help a number of people. We're going to have one client. We're always going to be stuck. We're always going to feel like failures as clinicians, and we're not helping people. Really, it does come back to what are the tools we need to bring to light. And that was my reflection to what you were saying. And I can go into a bit of sharing screen to talk into some frameworks. But do you have anything in response to that before I do that?
Yeah, sure. The framework is beautiful, and it actually it put my head in a certain place with writing my book. Like I'm not big into having recipes like just like this amount of this ingredient, like has to be this ingredient, yada yada, right? So I in my book I ended up doing fist sizes for portions, and also have recipe guidelines, which very much like frameworks.
Yeah.
But I also love how you're talking about uh, these frameworks for real health protocols as well.
Yes.
Like each individual has their own soup story skill and
Yes.
spark, right? As
Yes.
Dr. David Hasse says,
Yes.
which is soup's physiology, story, history. Uh, what am I missing?
The skill's what you do.
Skills.
So I'll
What
show
you
you the
do.
matrix
Yeah.
that I have
Yeah,
that
the matrix.
is based off of Dr. Hazi's uh, I don't know what you would call it, his framework there. And he has a lot of other S's that he brings in there. But I did an overlay that I teach into and that my podcast speaks into, where we are really looking at the different areas. So the story are what in functional medicine we call the ATMs, the antecedents, the triggers, and the mediators. The soup is that whole physiological interaction, and the skill is what are we doing? And I like to think of this not as a where are we going document. This isn't your action form. This is a snapshot, like a lab report is. Where are we now? And this is how I've taken those words, and this is a completed matrix. But again, we just look at, how we're thinking about these different areas. And if we look at the center, we're recognizing in that soup, the reason why it's a soup is because it's all blended together. It's all one thing. It's not a stew. It is a soup. And everything connects to one another. So we can't look at hormone issues without understanding that they're connected to the GI, and that the GI is going to be connected to the immune and inflammatory balance, and that our environmental inputs are going to influence the entire terrain. Everything is going to be connected, no matter what chronic condition we are looking at. They're all going to interact, and we have to be considering for ourselves as patients and for others as clinicians how these things are impacting one another, so we can be sure to address everything, not all at once, but be thinking through a lens of what were the triggers in this individual's life and how did they impact what they're experiencing in their body. And then what are the skills I'm going to introduce, A, based on what they're already doing, and B, based on what I can see needs to be done. So we're bringing a more systematic approach to what we're doing. And that's one of the tenets of functional medicine. There are three main tenets of functional medicine: that we look for those root causes. And I like to add the S to that because I think it's a misnomer that there is a root cause. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are now out there looking for the root cause, and they're looking for tests to tell them the root cause. There are many root causes, and we have to address them all in some way. And we address them by shifting the terrain in which those roots exist, which brings me to another model. After we look at the matrix, sorry to be...
What do you mean by shifting the terrain?
Yeah, so when we shift the terrain, we're thinking about the fact that those roots exist in a soil. And I'll come back to that pretty little image. The roots exist in soil. So if we're experiencing signs or symptoms, those are like branches on the tree. So the branches and the leaves, those are all the signs and symptoms, even the diagnosis. But to get to the roots, we're not addressing the Hashimoto's, the TBI, the Crohn's, the rheumatoid arthritis. We're not saying that that is the answer. We're saying, what are the roots of the expression of these signs, this symptom, or this diagnosis? Why is this occurring? So we're not asking what, we're asking why. And if you think about a tree and those branches and those leaves that we just defined that are not looking so healthy, we have to go to the trunk of the tree, and ultimately we have to go to the roots. However, those roots exist in soil. And if we look at the soil of that inhabits those roots, that those roots inhabit, I should say, that surround those roots, when we change the soil, we actually shift the expression of the roots and the trunk and the branches and the leaves. So I have a blog that's coming out today, actually, with an audio blog that talks about terrain and this concept of terrain that we can find on the blog. But you can think about when you have a tree or a plant that's not growing fruit. Let's say a tomato plant. I use an analogy in that blog about meeting a farmer in Hawaii. And he was trying to grow tomatoes in Hawaii, and the soil in Hawaii is so rich in nutrients and micronutrients and rich with the salts from the sea, but he couldn't grow tomatoes. And he went to a botanical store, and the gardener said, "We don't have a lot of calcium in our soil here. So if you add some seashells, some ground seashells that are rich in calcium to the soil, your tomato plant will bear fruit. It won't just be a healthy plant, it'll bear fruit." And so he shifted the soil, and that shifts the outcome. So our soil are those skills. It's everything we do in our every single day that shifts the expression of our signs, our symptoms, can even shift a diagnosis out of the state of being a diagnosis, or can help us manage or mitigate the effects of that diagnosis. And we know this with certain conditions. We know that we actually call certain chronic conditions lifestyle diseases like diabetes or heart disease. But this goes further. There's a tremendous amount that we can be doing with any chronic healthcare situation. Again, whether it took a long time to occur or there was an acute incident that then leaves us dealing with chronic chronic symptoms, we can actually shift the expression of those signs, symptoms, and diagnosis by addressing the soil. And this is one of my concepts that I call 3 roots, many branches. And those branches are every sign, symptom, and diagnosis. But those roots that we need to look at are very specific. And there's lots of things we can do with those roots. So I'm not giving you the answers because they'd be different for each person. But there are 3 roots that we can be tending to time and time again to get to resolution. And those 3 roots are the genes or the genetic predisposition, the digestion, and inflammation. And then these outer rings help us think about the things that we can be doing to shift the expression of those roots. And again, there are many things. If we look at food alone as an epigenetic factor that influences our genes, that's going to look different for every single person. But the ring I'd put around food would include quantity, quality, diversity, and timing. So those factors are what we put around here. But for one person, quality is going to be different than another person because we don't want those foods to be inflammatory. We have to calm, clear, modulate, and enhance the inflammatory cascade in the body, and food is a factor that can help us do that. So we need to think about what the food is, what's the appropriate food for that individual versus just thinking through food alone. But food, movement, environment, and mindset are the big groups of epigenetic factors that influence the genetic expression that leads us to experiencing those signs, symptoms, and diagnoses.
And this creates a framework for your students, or the practitioners you train. And I wanted to bring in the practitioners and the clinicians that you work with, that you teach. And oftentimes we're hit with a diagnosis or a medical crisis or whatever it might be, not expecting this to be the course of our lives, like both of us have experienced. And there comes a moment when you realize, like, completing the hero's journey.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I had this terrible, I had this situation, this health crisis, and I figured it out. I figured out how to heal myself and to get better to the point where now I'm helping others to do the same. And that's the completion of the hero's journey.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you have a lot of students that come to you in this sort of situation.
Yes. The hero's journey, usually for us to change our lives, for me to leave my job as a single mom in a good industry with a great situation. I'm working from home. I'm making a good salary. I'm respected in my industry, and to say goodbye to that. When we leave our situation, whether it's because we fall from a building or we are leaving our job, there's a reason we do that. And many people in the healing profession are here for a reason, whether they had that reason from a young age because they wanted to go to medical school, or we made changes in our lives and had second, third, fourth careers. We're usually motivated by something we're seeing in the industry, in healthcare at large, or that's happened in our own lives, either to ourselves or to a family member. And that starts the hero's journey, which happens over and over and over again. We're always going to be faced with trials, but I do, like you're saying, see a lot of people coming into the functional nutrition lab community that are there for a reason. They had to search for years to find solutions for themselves. They were getting information that was true but partial. They're still in pain. They're still suffering. They were told that diet didn't matter for their digestive issues. Whatever it was, there's a reason they're showing up. They healed their child of autism, whatever. People are coming for all different reasons, and they're coming together to say, I know there's another way. And this, for me, is where I really feel like it's not about saying that conventional medicine is wrong. There's a complete place for conventional care. And Kevin, I know you speak beautifully to these paradoxes and the matrix of help that we need. But there's also a huge gap in medicine. And it's not just in medicine, it's also in functional medicine. And I say that as somebody who is completely in service to the goals that functional medicine has to look at the whole person. But we need a different kind of clinical vantage point. And that clinical vantage point is not that of a health coach, and it's not that of an MD. It's of the nurses and physical therapists and physician's assistants and nutritionists and everybody the health advocates that want to sit in the place of saying, I know diet and lifestyle modification matter, and I'm going to take an approach to help this individual be the best they can be, manage the approaches that are being brought to them from their medical team, and really get into the everyday living to take it up a notch, further, 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 so that we can all live the best lives we're going to live. Because the medical intervention alone, whatever approach it's taking, isn't enough to get into the everyday self-care.
Yes, I love it. And that's exactly what I'm doing working with clients as well. So much of what I'm doing working with clients is coming from your teachings and how we can partner with clinicians and conventional medicine. So it's both functional approaches in in acute settings for sure. You know, acute medicine, conventional care is so amazing at saving lives, right? But then when it comes to restoring health,
Yes.
that's where functional medicine and looking at the whole picture shines.
Yes.
You know, there's so much used to diving in and simplifying things and if bleeding here, do this, right? Like
Right.
that's acute care and it works. But when it comes to restoring health, that's where we need to come in and marrying the two together. Um, this is something that you taught me beautifully, is working with clinicians and working with the entire medical team as a team. You know, we all want the same outcome. We want the patient to get better.
Yes.
So let's come together and make that happen.
Yes.
So how can people learn how to partner with their practitioners and how to, you know, say we have somebody who wants to complete the hero's journey and come into this and learn everything, learn from my mentor, um, how to complete this hero's journey and help people.
Yeah, great. I love what you're talking about, and I talk about it as the yes and approach. This isn't about saying this is the way it should be done and medicine's doing it wrong. There are times that we really do need to partner and understand all the complexities and all the whole team that needs to be present for somebody to complete their own hero's journey. And this is a lot about what I'm speaking into in the full body systems curriculum. It is for people who want to help other people. It's not a curriculum for those who are just looking to help themselves. And I should say, we all are our own first patients. So I know that a lot of people are doing work on themselves as they are learning to help other people. So they're not disparate from each other, but the full body systems curriculum is for people who are putting themselves out there, whether it's as a health educator, a health advocate, again, all the licensed practitioners and the certified practitioners. And full body systems, the doors are open now. I want to make sure people can learn about it. If it's of interest to you, you can go to feedabrain.com/FBS. FBS stands for full body systems. And make sure that when you get the 3 tiers to nutrition mastery, which you can get on that page, you connect with one of our dedicated admissions advisors. They can answer your questions about the program, but be sure to tell them that Kevin sent you, because I'll make sure you get the best pricing on the 10-month curriculum, and the best pricing is a $2,200 discount. So be sure to tell them that Kevin sent you. I will make sure they know who you are, and you can learn about the program, explore if it's right for you. You'll have the opportunity to come join me or some of my graduates to learn more in a webinar, and we'll just make sure you're set up to figure out if this is the right next step in your hero's journey.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, and I can say from my own experience, taking this curriculum, I definitely was healing myself further, because my understanding of how I could help myself expanded, and my understanding of how I could help others, of course, expanded with that. But yeah, like you said, we're our first patient.
Yes.
I have a friend who calls it me search.
Yes, perfect. I love it. Yes,
Right.
we're all always doing me search.
We're always doing me search, and we're seeing what works for us.
Yes.
And what works for us doesn't necessarily work for everybody. And it's not a cookie cutter, and this is the beauty of your work and programs and your exponential reach. So thank you so much, Andrea. It is always such a pleasure to speak with you, and while I'm out here in Oregon, we're definitely going to need to get together.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's hang out. I know these conversations continue. We get right into it when we see each other. So I look forward to continuing our conversations. And thank you for all the work you're doing in the world. So important.
Thank you. There she is, Andrea Nagayama. That was awesome. As you see, she is a really amazing teacher. The way she's just on point, concise, succinct, tells you what you need to know, and builds these beautiful charts and tools to better understand, and these frameworks that she has built out. So and so appreciative that she took off $2,200 for us. That's amazing. So yeah, head over there and just let them know that I sent you, and they'll make sure to chop that off for you. Thank you guys so much. Always a pleasure. I love being able to get this information out there, to interview some of these really brilliant people that I've found in my life and that have brought me to this work. And Andrea Nakayama is a perfect example. Again, if you're enjoying these, head over to Patreon, leave us a buck or two. That's patreon.com/AIBI for Adventures in Brain Injury. And if you don't want to spend any money, but you want to support us, leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or on Facebook, either the Feed a Brain page or the Adventures in Brain Injury page, or leave a review for my book, that's super helpful in getting that out there. And speaking of book, audiobooks now available. And I'm gonna wrap this up. I appreciate you guys very, very much, and have a happy holidays. Enjoy, and as I often say, the healthiest thing we can do for our brains, bodies, and souls is to enjoy our life and to do so sustainably. And I'll add, and to do it with each other. So enjoy your life, do so sustainably, do it with each other. Much love.
Someone take me to a doctor.